Hello everyone, welcome back to another Missoula County Extension cooking class. I'm Kelly Moore and I will be your host today. We have three different recipes we're going to talk about. March is usually a month of celebration. We all need something to celebrate for sure. So we not only have St. Patrick's Day, we have the first day of spring as well. And so it helps to get started with something new and exciting. And we're going to feature greens today because March is typically the month we think about green. So why do we want to talk about greens? Why are they so healthy? You may recognize some of the greens we have. We're going to focus on spinach, kale, collard, and turnip greens today. So some of those are more familiar to you than others. And each one of our recipes will feature one of those greens. So hopefully after today you will be excited to look for more greens and kind of do some more research on how healthy they are and how tasty they are. Okay? So we are going to start off with something fresh, and we're going to make a kale salad. These leaves right here, these are kale varieties. There's one more variety that you don't see with this grouping today, and that's what's going to be in our salad. And they call that a dinosaur kale. So we'll look at that in a few minutes. We're going to talk about something comforting. We're going to feature the collard and the turnip greens and talk a little bit about that recipe later. And then finally, we're going to end up with something smooth and cool. We're going to make a smoothie. And this is going to be featuring spinach. And I'm hearing it already. Some of you are not thinking that sounds very good. But actually, when we put everything together, you'll be surprised how tasty it is and how easy it is to get those vitamins, especially for kids. Okay? So let's start out with our kale salad. And I've dried these leaves a little bit because, of course, with any green, you want to wash them before you use them. Especially the collard greens, I noticed when I got those, they had quite a bit of sand still on them. So when you buy them fresh, they do come from a field someplace, and you do need to wash them off before you use them. So this is what we call kind of a dinosaur kale. I think it's because it just, for some reason, reminded somebody of a dinosaur. I'm not sure why. I think Toscano is another name for it as well. As you notice, it's a little different shade of green. It's a smoother leaf for sure. And so it just works out well with a salad. So I have a bunch right here. And this kind of came, you can buy these, let's say, any grocery store that has a lot of fresh greens. If you're not looking for them, go ahead and just walk over to some in your grocery store and look at leafy greens. You're surprised how many that they will have available to you. Okay? All right. Also, in this salad, it's a very easy, quick to make salad, very healthy. We basically have 3 to 4 ingredients. We have the kale. We're going to use these are radishes, and it's funny, they don't look like your typical radish, but these are called watermelon radish. And when we cut them, you're going to see why they're called that. We're going to make our own vinaigrette, which is also very easy to do. A little olive oil, a little lemon, some salt, and we're going to finish it off with a little golden raisin and some toasted cashews, okay? So we're going to cut these leaves, but while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and toast a few cashews. These cashews say they're roasted, but we want to give them that toasty flavor, which kind of brings out the nuttiness, and it just makes them taste a whole lot better. We are going to have to keep our eyes on those, though, because they do toast in a hurry once they get started. So the best way to cut the kale, because the stalks are typically pretty tough, not easy to eat, okay? And this salad is not cooked in any way, so we want to make sure we only get the tender leaves, all right? So we're going to take our knife, so let me take this out of the way here, and we're just going to kind of cut down the back of this leaf just along the sides of the stalk here, okay? And these are a lot thinner than your other kale, so So then we're going to leave this here, and that might be good rabbit food for sure. Okay, we'll just do that now. We'll do a couple of them at a time. It's best to use these when they're pretty fresh, so they will stay in the refrigerator for 4 to 5 days, but you want to start using them right after that for sure, because then they do lose a little bit of nutrition the longer they stay in the refrigerator, and the flavor starts to change too. Okay. Of course, you can use these kale as well and to cook with, like you do any of the other kale, but it just makes a really nice salad. All right. Plus, they're a very nice color to use in a fresh salad. Here, we'll try to speed these guys up a little bit. In fact, I used to take care of a rabbit quite often, and his favorite food was kale. So I would go to and get organic kale for him just because I thought he deserved it. So everybody always made a comment about how much kale I was buying all the time. And when I told them it was for a rabbit, they thought that was very funny. Kale has a lot of great vitamins in there, and this is what we wanted to talk about as well, about leafy greens. They are typically low in calories, of course, unless you add something to them. They are very high in vitamin A, E, and K, especially high in vitamin K, okay, which helps with blood clotting, so that's important. And of course, if you can eat anything fresh, that's going to have a little better vitamin quality to it. Okay, almost here at the end of that. One more to do here. All right. Plus, there's a lot of fiber in kale too. It's pretty inexpensive, and it's available pretty much year-round, but especially in the winter. Okay. I know you can grow it in the garden as well. Okay, so just to get through with all this chopping, we're going to just kind of roll them up a little bit and start out with a kind of a rough chop. You want them to be salad-sized pieces. Here we go. All right, I'm just kind of give a cross cut there. It's okay if you still might have a few little stems in there, you can pick those out too after you've chopped. All right, so this is one bunch of kale. If you had a lot of people to feed, you would certainly need more than this. But this is enough for probably a family of about 3 or 4, something like that. Okay. All right, so we're going to stick that in our bowl. Okay, so it's kind of a nice change from just a tossed salad that just has regular, typical iceberg lettuce or romaine lettuce or any of that. Okay. Now we still got our nuts going here. Okay, we're going to turn those up just a little bit. All righty. So now we want to cut our watermelon radish. These are not always easy to find, so if you want to make this salad, just keep your eyes open for these. All right, so if you can see the inside here, I'm going to kind of cut around the sides and get the skin off because that's kind of tough. There we go. So they're a beautiful color. You can see that. There are also recipes that use actual watermelon too, so you might kind of look for those if you prefer the watermelon. All right, so beautiful pink color. It's very nice to have that in a salad. Okay. Let's get a little bit more skin here. Plus, these are really great if you pickle them too, along with like some daikon radish or any of those. And since this is kind of a wide one, we're going to cut it in quarters. You still get the color, but a little easier to bite down on. Right. And this particular recipe doesn't have any onion in there, which is kind of unusual, so kids might be more likely to eat it if they're opposed to having onion. Okay, So that is one whole radish. I can smell our nuts starting to toast there. You don't want to burn them. Okay. All right, so I don't think we'll cut this one as well. I think one will be more than enough. I'm going to grab something to toss that with. Okay. All right. So at this point, we want to add our dressing. I think those are probably toasted enough there. Okay. So we're going to make a vinaigrette, which is really an easy thing to do. That's what I usually do for all salads. I prefer it to be fresh. I know what's in it, and it always has great flavor. So we're going to use a couple of tablespoons here of olive oil. Right. You can use other oils as well. Sometimes I've used walnut oil or sunflower oil. There's just a lot of them. Vegetable oil is still good too. Okay, I'm going to use a lemon, a fresh lemon, and obviously I must have taken off part of this lemon for a reason. I'm not sure what I did with, but anyway, we're going to juice the lemon. Try to get the seeds out here. So I'm only going to put half of the lemon in here. That was a pretty juicy lemon. Okay, and always have to dig out a few seeds. Right. And then we're going to use the zest, the lemon. So the zest actually has most of the flavor. That's what the oils of the lemon are. So, okay. Which, note to self, it's easier to do when you don't have half the lemon cut. But anyway, we got this to use here. Alrighty, so probably about a teaspoon. Oops. Probably because that's where you keep losing the seeds there. All right, so we've got the juice, the zest, and the olive oil. All right, then we're just going to use a whisk and just whisk it together just to make it thicker. Kind of making an emulsion there. Sometimes people will add like a Dijon mustard. You can do that as well. You can see it's getting a little thicker. And I'm going to add about a half a teaspoon of salt. There we go. Okay. So at that point too, you can always taste it. Some people prefer to add a little touch of honey if you want it a little bit sweeter. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just pour that over here, and we're going to add our raisins. That will be our sweetness. Okay. I think it calls for about 1/3 of a cup of raisins, so we're going to, I guess, using golden raisins just because it adds a little bit nicer color there. Whoops. Not the whole bag, though. Here we go. Okay. Okay. I'm going to toss that. We might add just a little bit of pepper on there as well. Okay. And then we will add our cashews to that. And at this point, you can certainly refrigerate it, have it later, and probably the flavors get a whole lot better. All right, but there's our kale salad. So that's very fast and easy to make. All right. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is our comfort greens, I call them. Okay. Okay. So unless you're from the South, or you know somebody from the South, or you've traveled there, you might not be familiar with these types of greens. So we have turnip greens here, which look a little bit more lettucey like. There are mustard greens, lots of different kinds. So, you know, just kind of experiment with that and see what you like the best, the flavors. These are the collard greens. They look a lot more cabbage-like, the cabbage leaf. And if you were to taste them, it's a very bitter taste. So it's not like something you want to make into, you know, coleslaw or anything like that. These greens require a lot of cooking, and that, in fact, it's probably, if you really want to cook those down for this recipe, I would say you should make it probably a day ahead, or at least it's something you want to cook for an afternoon, so it's more than a few hours. Most of the dishes made with the greens, especially the collard greens, have kind of an African history with them. So a lot of recipes came over from Africa, and then in this country, everybody kind of redid some of it and redid the flavors. And a lot of families have their own way of making the collard greens. So it's really interesting to talk about food history. Part of the greens, when you cook them down, you start out with, often the meat was added, like pieces of meat that maybe a lot of people wouldn't eat. So people who had to look a little bit harder to find food, and food was scarce, would pretty much take any part that they could find and cook it down. Ham hocks were often used. Anything that was a smoked meat, turkey legs, smoked turkey legs were popular to use in this as well. So it requires a lot of love and a lot of time to cook it down. And the liquid that is in the collards, and I'll show you what that looks like soon, that is called pot liquor, which I found to be interesting, so I kind of did a little bit more research. People in the South would know exactly what that means. But it's not spelled like liquor from a liquor cabinet. It is spelled P-O-T-L-I-K-K-E-R. So, which is kind of interesting. Again, I encourage you to read about the history of food. It's pretty fascinating. But it was always the liquid that would remain after you cooked your collards, and that's really where all the nutrition was. So after people ate the solid part with the greens and the ham, they would save the liquid, and they would drink it later on as a broth or to put it in soups, because it also was like a medicinal purpose when people needed something to make them feel better. So people will say with your pot liquor, and of course cornbread always went with that too. You would break up your cornbread, stick it in there, and eat it. So yeah, it has a lot of history to that. So I encourage you to try it. It's a little different taste because you have kind of an unusual ingredient. Again, we weren't able to make it here in the class because it takes so long, but you finish it off with a little vinegar, and that kind of takes away a little bit of the bitter flavor. So I'm going to put some in a bowl so you can see what it looks like. And I'm going to grab a bowl over here. If I can remember where they go or where they're from. No. Well, let's see. I have a paper bowl here. That's what I'll put it in. All right. Okay. So like I said, this was cooked down. The ham hock itself is cooked in. I always add chicken broth. You can add vegetable broth as well if you don't want to use, if you want to be vegetarian. Obviously, you'd leave the ham out and use vegetable broth. So this is what it looks like when it's cooked. Okay, that is a bowl of collards and ham. Right, and also there's a lot of liquid, and this is what would be called the pot liquor part. Right, and I wish you could taste it. I guess if you make it at home, you will be able to taste it. It's a great flavor, something I think you'll grow to love. You can add, I've added some red pepper to mine because I feel like it just needs a little spicing up. Here you go. All right. And also there's garlic, onion, and a lot of salt and pepper. But pretty much the collards themselves really have a nice flavor. We call it like eating green rags because that's what it looks like. So. But growing up, we used to have this quite a bit. It's a very inexpensive food, and like I say, anything to a good excuse to make cornbread was worth making it for sure. Tastes even better 2 or 3 days after it's been made. Okay. Okay. Also, all of these recipes will be available for you on the website, so you'll be able to make them yourself. We also want to do a smoothie. That's something we can finish up with here. We have some baby spinach. Spinach is pretty easy to grow here, so you might have some in your own garden. And a lot of times you'll get so much spinach, it's like, what do I do with it? And so this is a nice recipe the kids will really enjoy. So it just takes a blender or a magic bullet, whatever you happen to have at your house. Okay? This is nice for a breakfast drink as well. It has orange juice, banana, and yogurt. So pretty easy ingredients to put together. Okay? So we're going to have our ice in there because it was so noisy to chop that up. We thought it might be better to have it pretty much already done. So I'm going to take a banana, and I don't know about you, but usually when bananas get to this size, or not this size, but this color, it's like, I'm thinking, I really don't like those. They have to be just very green. So, but in this recipe, you won't even notice. It still has a very good taste to it. So let's take the lid off here. Hard to take the lid off with a banana in your hand. There we go. Okay, so we're going to add our liquid and our spinach too, because that way the spinach won't get too gummed up in there. You don't have to buy spinach in a bag. I did that today because of the convenience of keeping it. It's already washed. For another thing, spinach is another, any of the leafy greens really do need to be rinsed and dried because they usually contain a lot of dirt. Okay. So, and there are very few calories in any of the leafy greens. The nutrition far outweighs any of the calories. It's usually what we add to it that adds the calories. So I'm going to just kind of pack this in there. It will get chopped down pretty finely. Okay. Even the stems can go in there too. It's all going to end up getting smashed together. I'm going to add just a little bit of orange juice. It's about a cup of orange juice altogether. Apple juice will work well in this too. Stir on that spinach a little bit or add a little bit more orange juice. We have yogurt as well. This is vanilla yogurt, but in Greek yogurt, which has a little bit more nutrition to it than the regular yogurt. So we're going to add a couple of tablespoons of that. There's a recipe for this, but I tend to just kind of throw things in and it always works out well. A food processor probably works a lot better with this too. It's able to work a little faster. There we go. We'll throw in part of a banana. We are getting there. So you can see a lot of that spinach is already getting chopped up down there. So just add a little bit more orange juice there. We'll just the whole thing, see what happens there. Okay. So isn't that a nice color? It just looks like springtime right there, isn't it? I'm going to taste a little bit and see what we need to do to it. that tastes really good, just the way it is even. We might just add a teeny bit more yogurt. It's not overly sweet, which is kind of nice. You could also add a little pineapple in there as well. Kind of change it up a little bit, but there, you couldn't get much of a springier color than that for sure. And it is tasty. So we'll make sure everybody here gets to have a little bit of a taste. So we didn't even use the whole spinach package either. There's plenty left over to do a salad or whatever. So it actually takes very few ingredients to make a very healthy drink. So those are our 3 featured recipes today. Again, we have the collards, which is probably the longest cooking of all the recipes. Also the kale salad, which is right here. Anxious to try that. And then our spinach smoothie. So I hope that you will try these recipes and decide that at least one of them will be your favorite. And I encourage you too to really do research on some greens and try those out. One more thing I wanted to talk about here that I'd forgotten. This kale, of course, the same thing with the stalk. So if you're cooking that, you just want to take the leaves off. And I heard somewhere if you massage the kale leaves, it's supposed to make it, a lot better. So you're just kind of bruising the leaves. So that's a good job. You can put your kids to work just squeezing kale leaves and sticking in a bag. Okay? Makes a great stir fry. It's great in soups. So I encourage you to try some of these. All right? Thanks for joining me again, and I will see you next time. Happy spring.